Welcome to the Wealth Rebels show. I am so blessed and pleased to welcome back resident investment expert into all things property, gold, silver, physical assets, Pete James. So, Pete, we were just talking offline just now about what we wanted to talk about today because last time you came on the show, you talked a lot about gold and silver. And since you talked about that on the show and you came into the Star Portal, you come into the Star Portal, we obviously have these conversations that are shorter into the world so that the world can hear about you. And then you come into the Star Portal, which is my monthly investment circle, where we have open conversations and go deeper. And you come in for a whole hour and answer people's questions face to face, like, and share your incredible knowledge in the physical trading that you do. Since you did that, people have literally messaged me to say they are now proud owners of gold and silver and they feel really empowered. And I just want to say thank you for giving up your time and coming into my world, into the world of the people that are following me on YouTube, but certainly into the world of the investment circle because you have had such a huge impact on people. So, firstly, thank you very much for
Not at all. I'm glad I could help people. I'm glad that people are feeling that way, and yeah, it's great to see more people getting into it in a really positive way. So I'm glad that's happened.
I obviously I know you through our running club. I met you, you're a friend. And the reason that I wanted to bring you into my world is because you're just doing certain things for yourself. You're creating sovereignty in your own life by trading your own property, your own property. And we're going to talk more today about property. You said, let's focus on property because we talked a lot about gold and silver last time. Um, and you also own gold and silver. And I hope you don't mind me saying this, since last time you actually reached out for me because you were going to go and trade a bar of gold, right? And
Mm.
we used the community to see if anyone wanted to buy your gold before you go back to the Royal Mint with your bar of gold. And we talked
Yeah,
heavily about that. And that is amazing because this is what we're trying to create. We're trying to create sovereignty so that we can be our own bank,
yeah,
right? Have our own assets. That means we don't have to rely on centralized banking systems for our sovereignty, but we still have normal currency as well. We still have the normal things in our lives. So,
yeah. It's also obviously just part of the importance of diversification, as we always talk about. So there's lots of different ways to be investing, but yeah, the precious metals is always a good idea as long as it's part of a diversified portfolio.
yeah, what is diversification to you? When you think of diversification, what does diversification mean to you?
I try and think about investments that aren't affected by each other. So if I was investing, I have a property portfolio and I also invest in development projects. I don't see the two of those as being diversified because they're both property in the standard way that houses are property. So the way that I look at diversification is how I can have multiple investments that are different sectors. So you've got a bit of property, bit of precious metal, a bit of other investments. I know a lot of people that I know keep their safety net just in premium bonds because it might be a low average return and it's not guaranteed that you're going to win anything. But premium bonds are a very safe, easy way to just store a little bit of money behind um, and make sure that you've got a rainy day fund that is easily accessible within a couple of days. And a lot of people get very lucky with premium bonds. So that's sort of how I see diversification. That you've got a bit in the bank, a bit in precious metals, a bit in crypto, maybe a bit in property. I'm not going to talk about crypto because it's not my area of expertise, but I know a lot of people, as long as it's part of a diversified portfolio, it can work for lots of people. And as long as you're diversified, you're 100% safer.
100%. Yeah, you've got different things that are doing different things. So it just protects you overall. And I think there's some points that you mentioned there, Pete, that I just really, really want to kind of hone in on. We just had a really great session in the portal with my other resident expert, Dan, about crypto, and it blew my mind. The whole purpose of the Star Portal, if you're listening to this show, the whole purpose of the Star Portal is to create a community where we become traders in our own in all our own assets, right? So we decide how much we want to put into gold, silver, we decide how much we want to put into property, we decide how much we want to put in the bank. We become traders, we become sovereign, and we become sovereign through knowledge, and knowledge is really powerful. And so this is why we have different experts coming into this world. So if you want to come into the Star Portal, use star 1 month at the checkout. You get a month free, and it's £8 thereafter to be part of a growing community. There's a WhatsApp group where we will literally go, here's the price of gold, here's the price of silver, here's the price of Bitcoin, here's this 4 year cycle in Bitcoin. And we were just talking about 4 year cycles. So we're learning always about different things so that we can understand and build our knowledge so that when we go onto a platform, it's not foreign language. So first,
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that. But what's really interesting, you talked about premium bonds there, and we're going to dive into
Mhm.
property before we go off on a total tangent. But this is the whole beautiful thing about what we do here is that we don't know where we're going to be led always. We want to talk about property today and understand some of the really great things around property and why property is important, and how then you can manage the taxation side of property and think about this as an asset. Is that premium bonds is very
Yeah.
safe because it's you're giving money to the premium bond of National Savings and Investments. It's a lottery. So they basically, for every bond you own, you go into every month you go into the lottery, which means that it's tax-free winnings. If you win, you could win anything from £25 per bond, and every bond you could have multiple bonds win, right? Up to £1 million per bond, right? So
Yeah.
you're in the winnings and it's tax free. So it has get me English out here. As a high earner, it's a really great way of earning extra money without having any tax implications as well.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of a on the, people often talk about the algorithms that the more you have, the more likely it is. Someone mentioned to me, I think there was some research did on this. If you own more than 10,000 in premium bonds, you're more likely to win. But it's just a safe haven, and you could win the lottery. Tax efficiency drops straight into your bank account. And if you need to go and fix your car because you need some money, it will be in your bank account within a couple of days. It
Yeah, it's a
there's
good, clever way that they work it out as well. They have a random numbers generator. So based on the bonds that you own, you could own up to £50,000 per person. They can own up to £50,000 worth, which is 50,000 bonds. And the random numbers generator once a month generates a group of random numbers, and those bonds are the winners. And those prizes are, I think there's two £1 million prizes every month. There's then I think a few hundred prizes between 10 and £5,000, and then there's um, quite a few prizes that are hundreds, fifties, and 25s. I mean, my most I've ever won in a month was three prizes. One was 100, one was 50, and one was 25. So if you look at having a few £1,000s in there, and then just in 1 month of the whole year you win £175, you're already looking at a much higher interest rate than
yeah.
your bank would give you. And it's not guaranteed. It is just a lottery, and you might not win for a whole year. But I tend to win every few months. I mean, I've been very lucky this year. I've won sort of 3 or 4 months. In 2024, I mean, I won, I think, 4 or 5 times. And it came to a few £100s in total. It's sometimes only £25, and sometimes it's £100.
Yeah.
And it is just good that when you do need that money, if you need to take £1,000 out, then you can just take it out and you can sell those bonds. And when you've got the money back again, you can put it back in. So it is a really good safe haven, and it's very easily accessible. And because it's with the Treasury, basically, because it's with National Savings and Investments, it's very secure.
Yeah, in current times, in mainstream times, it's really secure, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. So for someone in the UK here, if someone's listening from abroad, this is a UK based investment. So, and I won £500 once,
Hmm.
off one bond, and I spent it on taking my son Harry to Bristol to watched The Lion King, and I just was like, thank you, premium bonds. So for a lot of people, they use their winnings to like enhance their life, if they're not needing this money as well. So because you in the
Absolutely, yeah.
lottery, you don't know it's necessarily going to come in. So you can really treat it as like tax efficient extra lifestyle things that you're just like, whoa, I didn't even know this was going to come in. Thank you very much. And what one thing that you just said is really important because it's like 50,000 and it's per bond and there's no growth in it. You're not growing your money in real terms, right?
Mhm.
Um, you're getting your winnings. Your winnings is your growth.
Yeah.
And therefore you have to decide what to do with it. So just making sure, the impacts of your original £50,000 in terms of inflation is diminishing in real value, right? In terms of if you
Yeah.
inflation.
Yeah, you sort of just have to hope that you'll win more, and with if as long as you're winning more in a year than inflation's going up, then you are still making money on your investment, as it were. But I don't see premium bonds as an investment per se. I just see it as a good place to keep your safety net or to keep your emergency fund. Because when you have a house that you're letting out to tenants, it's very important to have a safety net in case there's something that goes badly wrong. It's important to have funds available in case you need to replace a boiler or something like that. You don't want to ever have all your money put away in investments that can't be accessed, because you have a responsibility to look after your tenants. And of course, you have to often do that quite quickly if it's something as major as a heating system or water or electricity. So it's important to make sure that you don't put all your money away into somewhere where you can't access it. But if it needs to be accessible, you might as well have it in a premium bonds account that might not be guaranteed interest, but on average, you're going to do a lot better than if it was in the bank.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and this is the thing for a lot of, and this is, I'm curious. I'm going to go deeper. Before, I'm going to go rogue before we go into like property and taxation, right, Pete? If people are just starting out, sorry, no one can see the video. I'm like flashing my boobs straight up to the video. Literally, if people are just starting out and, they're thinking, well, I don't have £10,000. I don't, I just want to get onto the property market. I just need to get going. How did you get started with it? What would you do? Do you just think, right, well, firstly, I'm going to build up my money to be able to buy a property and get started? Because I think,
Yeah.
getting started with property is a really great place to get started. But if you then have a tenant, you have to have liquidity. Catch 22, it can feel really daunting if you don't have the money yet, right?
Yeah.
How did you
Yeah.
get started
Especially
with
when you're
that initial outlay?
Well, when you're building up, it's important to remember that passive income is very rarely passive at the start, right? So you you know that you want to have a property, you know you want to let it out to tenants. You need to raise that money, you need to be working. And when you set it up, there's usually a period of time where you're still having to work while you raise that money. And then after you've got your tenants and you are able to afford your house, you're still having to work, because you do have to build in those costs um, into the purchase. And you have to make sure that when you buy the house, you're going to have to pay stamp duty on it. You're going to have to pay second home tax, because even if you don't own a home, if you're doing a buy to let, then it counts as a second home. And you're going to have to pay all those fees to the solicitors and doing all the searches. And then even after all of that, and you actually have the keys, you still need money to find a tenant. You still need money to advertise the property. And then even after they're in, you still need money just in case something goes wrong. And like I call it, the safety net. But it's very important to remember that passive income doesn't happen overnight. And if you want that passive income, the work still has to be put in. And I've never stopped working. I never stopped working day to day when I was building that up. It was very difficult to live on it at the start. I'm very lucky now that it's a lot easier to live on.
Not luck,
Um,
Pete. It's not luck, is it? You very, very strategically decided, I'm going to work for a period of time to earn money, but I'm going to put a part of my earnings towards this strategic plan. So did you
mm.
strategically have a plan to go, I want to earn a property by this time in my life? Did you think of it in that way?
I
Um,
thought very consciously about sort of material purchases. So I thought very carefully all the time about. I know that this is a very old argument about certain people say that people would be able to afford houses if they didn't go out for coffee every day. That's obviously not true, because you could buy a cup of coffee for 1,000 years and it wouldn't make the same price as a deposit. But it's more about thinking consciously about things you're spending your money on, and you'll realize when you start doing that that a lot of what you have in your life is um extra, and it's a luxury. So not even the things you might consider a luxury, but things like a gym membership, £40 a month. It's very easy to stay fit and exercise without using a gym. You can save money in all sorts of different ways. The cinema, I think the last time I went to the cinema, it cost me 20, £25 after you've bought snacks and all sorts of things like that for two people. So um, I remember thinking very carefully about things I was spending my money on, trying to be as frugal as possible. And I was working very hard to make sure that I could be putting extra money away after I'd paid my rent and things at the time. So
Yeah,
um,
you consciously chose to work hard. I think there's such a misconception in the world that I do that you don't have to work hard to make money. Bullshit. Calling
yeah,
bullshit on this. It's not true. And also you have to love what you do to want to work hard. It doesn't mean you have to go and do a job that you hate, right?
no, of course, yeah,
Go and do something that you can put your heart and soul into, where you're going to get paid for your time and energy to earn money, and then raise your consciousness around to where you're channeling that money. Right today, I sat at home and I did go down to Heartbreak for a coffee. It cost me £3. And I sat
yeah,
in there and I did some work, but I needed to get out of my house, right? We're not
yeah,
saying don't consciously go and spend money places, and I do have a gym membership at Saunton. But what I consciously do is I go every night for sauna and I make the most of that membership because it
yeah,
adds to my life. I gave up booze, not because I didn't want to spend the money, actually. I didn't want to have hangovers every day because I knew my time and energy creates money in my
yeah,
business, in my businesses, in
yeah,
what I create. So
yeah,
I've raised my consciousness. And this is one of the things that I coach when I coach as a wealth coach. A big part of what I do is I get people to look at how they spend, save, and invest. And we start with the spending. And it sounds really like everyone just wants to jump into, but I want to invest my money. I want to be rich. I want to buy Bitcoin. I want to buy a property. Firstly, go back and look at where you're channeling your time, energy, and money. Where are you
yeah,
earning? What's the money in? What's the money out? And you've
yeah,
just beautifully said that, because passive income is rarely passive income. It's a
yeah,
complete on, and we have
yeah,
to really, really make sure that what we're getting in is energetically aligned, because we're giving our energy over here into the working hard, and then we have to work hard on where we're sending that money. And you and
yeah,
I know as well, we joined Run Club, right? Which is
mm,
free. There are ways of getting out there. If you aren't blessed and able enough to have a gym membership, or a David Lloyd or a Saunton Sands in my case,
yeah,
or a
yeah,
Braun gym, whatever, wherever
yeah,
your gym membership is. There are so many things now popping up, like the Heartbreak Hotel Coffee Shop Run Club.
mhm, yeah,
Places like that where you can just go and work out in a community, because a lot of it is
yeah,
that community
yeah.
basedness.
And if we learn it, if we think about it at with regards to precious metals, £40 a month is the price of our local gym. I know Saunton's a little bit more. There's different programs you can go to, but if you think about, say you were spending £3 on a coffee every morning, that's £90 a month. Plus the gym membership, that's another £40 a month, say. So you're looking at £130 a month, which could be saved for a month, and then you could use it to
Isn't
buy
that the
some
price of
silver.
gold at the minute? So
Yeah, so a
what's
tenth
really
ounce of
interesting is
gold
you
is
could
only
forego the
200
gym
pounds.
membership for an ounce of silver, uh,
Yeah,
and own silver that is expected over time to go up in significant value.
yeah,
Um, and then if we were to do that with our membership, gym membership, and the price of the coffee and all of the things, then we could buy an ounce of gold uh,
yeah,
currently as well. And you're thinking then, well, what do I want to buy this month? Do I want to buy some
mm,
gold, or do I want to go to the gym membership, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's important to remember that although it might not sound like a lot in the moment, added up, it can, really help you. And that money that you spent, £200 that you bought a tenth ounce of gold with, um, the next year it's going to be worth a little bit more, or the next month you can buy the same again. If you can save £100 a month, you're saving £1,200 a year, and that's a significant amount of gold if you're investing in
Yeah,
gold. Like twelve
a
hundred
bank of
pounds
gold.
is
And remember, we keep our gold in little safes in our houses. Um,
yeah.
or,
Twelve
or
hundred pounds is half an ounce of gold, which, over the last year has gone up 30%.
Yeah, 30% growth for
Mm,
literally being conscious. And you could find that not, we're going to extremes here because, a lot of the time, I think your daily cup of coffee habit, whatever your habit is, the crux, I call it the money leak or the wealth leak. Is there a habit that isn't enriching your life? For me today,
mm,
I was actually in a habit of spending way more on coffee every day because it was like
mm,
every time I go somewhere new, I'll just go have a cappuccino. And I rose this awareness very recently, actually, that I was literally leaking money through my cappuccino habit. So then I went to Lidl and I bought some really nice coffee. I bought my plunger and I make my coffee and I make it everywhere I go. But then I have one coffee a day. So
yeah.
I've reduced my
Sure.
habit. And
Yeah.
therefore, in theory, if I'm saving 10 quid a day, 300
Yeah.
quid a month, do the math, right? That
Mm,
is maybe I could buy 2 ounces of gold and 2 ounces of silver.
yeah. And then that's something that's making you money instead of just costing you money.
Yeah, and I'm not missing out on the coffee. I've realized there's actually, because sometimes we have an addiction to something.
Hmm.
Right, I'm addicted, clearly. Now I don't drink booze and I'm dead boring. I clearly have an addiction to buying
Yeah.
coffee because in my head, you know what? One of the things that came up and this is really interesting, Pete. I know we're going off on a tangent here, but this is the whole purpose of these conversations, right? Is that my wine that I was drinking, my 2 glasses of wine that I survived a day every day that was impacting my sleep, you know, that the bottle of wine was 6 quid, right? Then
Yeah.
coffee habit that replaced it because I don't drink wine anymore. Okay, I'm gonna have a really nice cappuccino today because I don't drink wine. Was costing me way more.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it because I was then became addicted to something else. And we have to not replace addictions with addictions. We have to raise our consciousness again and constantly challenging how the mind works. Because what the mind does is it forms habits, it then creates a belief, and then it flows on emotion. And so every time I think of coffee shops, my emotions kick in and goes, oh, I really want that coffee. I really want that coffee and cappuccino. And then I
Yeah.
emotionally buy it. We're trying to break the emotional cycles.
Yeah. Sure. And you're trying to break those material instincts for,
Yeah, for
what
anything,
passes for sort of
anything.
superficial pleasure.
Yeah, because then when we do that, we're taking back sovereignty and we can then really consciously
Mm,
choose to save that money into a little bit of a bank account. And then
yeah.
at the end of the month or the start of the month, I always think it's more healthy to do it at the start of the month before you've spent money to put some money into to gold and silver or
Yeah.
into a little bank account where you're going to save up money for a property purchase in the future,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. There's a
What you
really
could do with that is, and you've just said this beautifully, is you could start saving up that money in premium bonds over time.
yeah.
You could have it in a high interest account over time until you're ready to buy your property
Yeah. It's about cutting
or a
down
stock for
those.
shares ISA if you are thinking, or a lifetime ISA, all these different tax wrappers to get you on the property ladder.
Yeah.
Let's dive into property then, my love. Um, let's dive into your expertise of property because you said there's two different types. There's the residential and there's the development. Um, in your eyes, if someone was getting started with investing into property, let's look at the two. Why would I go into residential instead of what development? Because the two are very different, right?
So there's an idea that to be in property, you have to know about property. That's not necessarily the case. You can save a lot of money if you're a builder, or if you've been in a job where you've been able to gain some sort of experience from the property market, but it's not the same as like needing to. So there are plenty of platforms out there. There's a really good a podcast and magazine called Property Hub, which is a guy that I think started on YouTube. And him and a friend have made an amazing, thriving business where they help cash rich, time poor investors invest in property. So they buy real assets on behalf of their clients. and then they run them and let them out. They obviously take a small fee for from the profit, but it their platform makes it easy for people to invest in property that know nothing about property. And at first, it sounds like a pyramid scheme. It isn't. They do a really amazing job. I've never used them because I was lucky enough to have the experience from the building trade. So I've got a property services business that I run. So I'm able to do a lot of things and save a lot of money because I can do things myself. I can build things. I can improve the value of property myself. For people that can't do that or can do it but don't have the time, those platforms are really clever because it means that you're trusting someone with the experience and the time to do it for you. And it also means that you don't necessarily have to. I think Property Hub does have a minimum, but there are other platforms where you can invest in a property that's a real property. It's not a development or a money lending thing. It's a real property, but you're putting your money into a pot with other investors' money in order to raise the value of the house purchase. So you might only put in 10, 20,000, which on your own wouldn't be enough to buy the house. But with 10 other investors, you've suddenly got the deposit and you get a mortgage through a limited company. And these interim companies are very good at setting up those sorts of arrangements with groups of investors. So it's basically angel investing for the property market. And it's a really clever idea and it works for a lot of people. I would suggest if you do have the time and the resources and the skills to do things yourself, you do save money on those fees and having to let those interim companies take their cut. But like I say, a lot of people don't have the time for it. So it's really down to individual circumstances.
That's a wonderful bit of advice. One of my clients actually, who's going to come on this podcast, is setting up her own with female kind of like community for investing to bring this sort of like connection together to do her property in a different way. And so we'll share that. I think it'd be really great. I will share into the show notes links to the Property Hub and links to Debbie's um,
Mhm.
place as well, because I think it's really wonderful for people to explore ways that they can get in to the property world with smaller sums of money. But what I think is interesting is if you had 10 to 20,000 pounds, you could still get a residential buy to let, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
you need, I think on average, you need about 25% of the valuation of your property. And I think one of the biggest diversification methods is if you live somewhere, maybe you want to have your residential property in a different city, in a different place that is
hmm,
different to where your home asset is that you may one day rent out or do a rent a room scheme, because that's another thing that you
yeah,
can do to earn money, right? So,
mm,
you could be really savvy. And if you do that, then you could go and buy a property that maybe, if you were thinking of buying a property that is worth about, I don't know, £200,000, 25% of that is 50K. Um, that could be a really great place to kind of build up some goals towards. What are your
yeah.
takes on that, the buy to let market and the residential aspect of
What's
investing?
interesting is something that I was told beforehand, before I started, was someone said to me, don't ever buy a house that you wouldn't live in yourself. You don't need to live in the house. So it's not something that is very good advice, really, because like you say, you just because the houses in your town might average at 300,000 because you live in a nice part of the country, it doesn't mean that you can't buy a house that's only 120, 110, 120,000. I've got friends that have bought houses up in the north of England that are managed for them. A couple of them went to university up in Liverpool and Leeds, and they bought houses outside the cities a lot cheaper than you would be able to get outside London, for example. So people think, oh, 25% of 600,000, I'm never going to be able to do that. Um, 25% of 100,000 is a lot less. And if the house itself is only 150,000 to buy, then the mortgage can be weighed against that. So it's not like you have to come up with the full amount. These 25% buy to let mortgages, 25% sounds like a lot compared to a residential mortgage, but if it gives you that freedom and gives you a profit from it, then it's also a lot easier to get them. They're, you know,
Yeah.
they take the risk out on the tenant, not out on you as an
Yeah,
individual. So
of the investment of
um,
the actual property, not necessarily the tenant. It's the rentability of the asset. They look at the
yeah,
asset, they look at can you rent it? You know, you have a business plan. Usually you go, this is what I think I can do. Um, and therefore they look at it as a risk on the asset, nothing to do with you, you know,
yeah,
and your affordability because you're not going to live in it. So you don't need to live in it. I love that. We get given all of this shoddy advice through life. Don't buy
yeah,
something that you wouldn't live in yourself. That's not true. I'm buying an
yeah,
asset that somebody else would actually live in, and I would want to make it a good standard of living for that person. But
yeah,
fundamentally, it's an investment.
sure,
It's an investment that's going to give you eventually passive income
yeah,
and you can leverage by borrowing it, and you might be more likely to be able to get that mortgage buy
yeah.
to let lending than if you do it. Some people are really stuck, especially young people. They're really stuck getting a residential mortgage because they just cannot get 4 or 5 times, which is the valuation of the property that they're
Mm.
living
Yeah,
in.
and your salary has to be, you know, a fifth of or a fourth of what the property value
Yeah.
is for you to get a
Even if
mortgage.
you're in
But
a
with a
couple,
buy
they
to let,
go,
you don't need to
they
do that.
they they do like 4 times plus one. So
Mm.
it's people are really, really struggling in this world to get onto the property ladder. And
Yeah,
not many people know about the benefits of property. I don't think at this stage, Pete, I think we need to overwhelm people with the tax management of it. I think it's the
sure.
inspiration at the minute to get started because if people are just getting started, they're not going to be that hugely worried about tax and setting up a limited company necessarily, I
Yeah.
think. It might be just that they want to get started in their own name, right?
Yeah. And I'm happy to answer those questions in the portal anytime anyone wants
Yes.
to ask me anything about tax. I'm happy to talk about it.
Yes, exactly. And that's the whole benefits of this is that we are creating these conversations. You are so knowledgeable in this because you're doing it for yourself. You know, nobody you didn't go to trading school like I did in London and go and do investment banking, right? You did this yourself. This is amazing. And this is what when we were running up that hill that day. Do you remember the steepest hill in the world
Yeah.
that Mike took us up? And we
All
were
through lane.
going all
Yeah.
the way up to the top, going, really? And I was just like, whoa, 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 people need to know about this. Oh my God, you know. And that is the whole thing, is that you've built up this knowledge literally by doing it for yourself in the trenches, by just seeing how things go, buying some silver, seeing the benefits, buying some gold, you know, and starting to build up a property business through residential trading and through then development. Tell me a little bit before we dive into kind of like maybe just calling it a day today, just a little bit around how you moved into development as well through some of the
It
work
was
that
more,
you
it
do.
was another way to sort of, you know, diversify, but also um I found a good company that does interim investments and does you know borrowing for developers, which is a hands-off approach. But I can also do do a lot of those things myself, and with my in my day-to-day business, I can do as much or as little as I like of it. But I can take on projects where I'm helping people improve their houses and helping with renovations and things. And it's a very good area of property because it's growth in the time frame that you want. If you're quite busy and you don't really need the money, then a renovation of a house that you own can take up to a year. My dad, when he first got into buying a house and things when he was in his 20s, he would buy a house, live in it, and he would do it up while he's going to work. So on his evenings and his weekends, he's very practically minded, and he was able to replace doors and replace skirting boards and lay carpets and fit kitchens and things. And he would just do sort of an hour a night. It's a lot easier these days. We've got YouTube and things that help you with that stuff. But his dad was an engineer, so he got helped by by him about the logistics around doing those sorts of jobs. But he would then sell the house in 1 2 years time and buy a slightly more expensive house that's also dilapidated but is bigger in a nicer area, and he would do the same thing again. So in his 20s, he did sort of 4 or 5 houses up himself, And in that sense, it was quite good because he was working. If he didn't have the time one weekend, if he was going away or if he was busy one evening, he didn't need to increase the value of the property or sell it straight away because he was living in it. So he had somewhere to live. And it might not have been very comfortable at the start, but he very quickly got it to a point where it was comfortable. The point is that he wasn't in a rush to finish it. So if that sort of thing works for you, I'm often talking to people about how if you can find a house that is livable but is just aesthetically quite dated. I often see houses on the market that are they look sort of like they haven't been renovated since the 70s. They might not have spotlights, they might have an old kitchen, and these are all quite easy aesthetic things to do. But the house isn't uninhabitable, so you can just do those things as and when you want, and you've got somewhere to live, so you're not paying two mortgages. And it's amazing what you can actually do yourself. There's so many jobs that need to be done by professionals. I'm a plasterer by trade. I wouldn't suggest anybody tries plastering without having learnt how to do it first. It's an incredibly skillful thing to do, and once you know how to do it, it's very, very straightforward. But it's not something people do on their own. But when it comes to laying laminate flooring or painting, or fitting skirting boards, you can go buy some basic woodworking tools and look up some tutorials on YouTube. And all of this information's free online. It's amazing. I think people would be amazed with how much they can actually do if they put their mind to it. And if they had that, like you say, that drive to want to create something for themselves, I think people would be amazed by what they can achieve.
I love that, Pete. You just told people if they were in the North Devon area and they want a plasterer, the fact that what you do is really important because you do different things. You have the awareness of using a company that you can put your money into, through a company that will do the development, and you are giving your money away and going, make me some money, like a lending
Mm,
way of lending it. You're then also doing these jobs for people in your own business. And by doing that, you are a qualified plasterer, right? And this is a really highly skilled job. And so you're able to get your hands dirty, but also you're saying you could live in a property and do it up as well, like, and do live it, living in the property. There's no tax then to pay because you live in
yeah.
your asset. One of the biggest things that people struggle with is when they're not living in the home that they're doing up, there's massive more capital gains tax. And we'll talk about that in the portal, right? But it's really being creative about what aligns with you. For some people, the thought of living in a home that's dated would be their worst nightmare. They have money, they just want to live in a nice home but give it away, or
Mm,
do it a different way and pay somebody else to do it, or find a property hub way of doing it. And this is why this eclectic mix of ideas is really, really amazing. And some people will reno the house, right, and live in
yeah.
it.
And you
My
might be
friend put that in
uncomfortable for a
London,
while.
right?
Yeah, sure. It might be uncomfortable for a while, and it's not something that suits everybody, but would you rather be uncomfortable for a little bit and create some sort of personal wealth for yourself and create some passive income, or would you rather immediately be in a place that, looks nice? Um, it's amazing what you can put up with if you have the drive to build something for
You
yourself.
have
It's
to have
amazing
the
what you can put up with.
vision,
Yeah, for
what you're
sure.
doing.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
that's really
definitely.
important. A lot of people struggle to have the vision, especially when they've been told that they can have it all now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes, and I do, I do a lot of manifestation and visualization, but we can have a lot, and this is maybe why then you maintain your Saunton gym membership, because whilst you're living in a house you're renting, you might want to go to Saunton to see the view and have a nice shower, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you
And this is
if
the
you're
thing, this is
replacing the
what you
bathroom, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Pete, thank you so much for your time today. I think that's a beautiful place to end. We've talked about so many eclectic different topics there, and this is why I just love what the energy that you bring, because you have this such a different mix of experiences, and I think combining that with my way of life and my background is so funny and interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I think the takeaway from everything that we've talked about today is it is very important before anything to think about those material purchases. My sister said something to me years ago that always stuck with me, and I'm sure it's a well-known phrase, but she said, "Rich shouts, wealthy whispers." And I always think about that when I'm thinking about buying something nice for myself, like buying a new item of clothing or looking at a new car or a new van or something. I think about her saying rich shouts, wealthy whispers. And actually, it's more valuable to not have the most expensive car or not have the nicest looking jacket or whatever it is, or not have a Rolex on. But how many people can say that if they don't want to go to work on Monday, they don't have to? They can wake up and see how they feel. I think that's where the real wealth lies.
I
And I think
love
that's the
that.
most
I love
important
that.
thing about thinking about material assets and material purchases is that every little helps. And those things actually
Now, wait,
just,
isn't that Tesco's Every Little Helps or something,
yeah,
or Sainsbury's?
every little helps. Yeah, every little helps when you're investing. I think every little
Giving
helps. You've got to
promo to
start
the
small.
Oh, do you know what I was thinking, just really quickly on that, Pete, is that when you see truly wealthy people, they're not walking around in designer clothes. They
Yeah.
don't give a crap
No.
about, wearing Gucci or Prada. Maybe they would have Rolex because that is an investment, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when we
Sure.
buy something like that, we're buying an
Yeah.
asset that we think is going to go up in value.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the cars, like it's like such a money pit, isn't it? Buying a new car. It's the biggest con of, like, I would say in Middle England is that we're conned into getting a new car every year and
Yeah.
literally throwing 20 to 30,000 pounds a year in finance into having the latest car. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, you should see the state of my car on the drive right now. And I really couldn't give a monkey's. Like, it's really not what is important to me. I am
No.
questioning the fact it's not wanting to start at the
Yeah.
minute because
Yeah.
I do need it for my kids. But what is it? Rich shouts, wealthy whispers.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
beautiful.
I think that's I always think about that, and I can hear my sister saying I don't know whether she came up with it or whether she must have got it from somewhere, but I always think about that when I'm thinking about treating myself. I really think about carefully what's more important. Is it more important for me to have this material thing, or is it more important for me to protect my way of life in that if I want to go surfing in the middle of a weekday, then I can do that, and there's nobody that's going to stop me, and I don't need to follow, sing to someone else's tune, really.
Amazing. If you guys want to speak to Pete or me in any of these things, come into the Star portal, Star 1 month for a month for free. It's £8 a month thereafter. The community is growing. We just had 7 beautiful souls in the live chat with Dan. Pete will be back not next month, the month after. We've got Adam, who comes in and talks about the stock market, who's an investment manager. It's a beautiful mix of eclectic knowledge, and it's a place where we will openly share all of our expertise and answer any question and grow the community so that we can become really, really confident investors in all aspects of life. Right. Thank you, Pete.
No problem. Happy to talk to you.